So you're planning on growing your own starter plants. Bravo. And you're wondering, is it better to start them in a greenhouse or under grow lights? Well, my backyard farmer husband has done this both ways, and we'd like to share the comparative results. We'll also share our surprising pot story, so you want to stick around to the end. So here's our seedling sob story. Last year, Jamie planted hundreds of seedlings per usual in our greenhouse, and just weeks before planting time, they all unexpectedly got wiped out by mice or some other type of critter. So he was suddenly left with no starters to plant in the gardens. Completely devastating. He had been successfully growing his starters in the greenhouse for decades. As you can see, he would build a tent within the greenhouse. He kept a lamp in the tent. He had heating pads under the trays to help keep the seedlings warm, especially in the beginning of this process when it was still cool out. So, flashback to last spring. It's April, and the mice have destroyed the starters. So, what now? Well, Jamie grows way too much to be buying all of those starter plants, so he had no choice but to plant new seedlings. And because it was so late in the season, they were small when he transplanted them into the garden, and so our harvest was nowhere as abundant as normal. This year, Jamie didn't want to risk the same thing happening, so he grew his starters in our basement. Look at the size of these plants. They're huge. Many of them are already flowering. This has never happened before. They've never gotten quite this large, and they certainly haven't had this many flowers. They really should be planted outside, but it's been super wet and cool out, so we've been waiting for a better time. But they'll go out soon, and once they do, I'm sure they'll start producing pretty quickly. Setup is pretty simple. Again, he uses a heating pad underneath the trays for the first month or so, like he did in the greenhouse. And of course, he has grow lights hanging above the trays. He had to raise them up several times as the plants got larger. Unexpectedly, these starters are much larger and healthier than when he grew them in the greenhouse. Why? Well, Jamie says it's because the temperature stays an even 65 to 70 degrees in the basement versus the fluctuations that are inevitable inside the greenhouse. They have been getting a consistent amount of light, and he has been even more attentive than usual to their watering needs, checking on them each morning and night to be sure the soil stays just at the right level of moisture. Jamie did something else this year that's making a big difference for the better. Typically, we plant our starters in either a peat pot or a handmade soil block, which sounds great because theoretically you can plant the whole thing into the garden without disturbing the roots. But the reality is peat pots and soil blocks each have their own limitations. As far as the peat pots are concerned, from constantly getting wet, they do begin to fall apart before it's time to plant them in the garden. As far as the soil blocks are concerned, they aren't that large, so Jamie has found he needs to transplant them into pots anyway before they're ready for the garden. And because the roots start to grow out of the individual blocks and start to grow into each other, the roots end up getting disturbed when transplanting into pots, which of course stunts their growth. So this year, not only did Jamie start the seedlings in the basement under grow lights for the first time, he also started most of the plants in individual 3.5 inch by 3.5 inch pots, and he thinks that's another reason why they grew so big. It finally stopped raining and the weather turned warm, so Jamie was able to plant the roasting peppers a couple of days ago, and also the tomatoes that we grow for canning. He'll plant a separate garden with the lettuces, eggplants, string beans, paprika peppers, heirloom tomatoes, and more. Yesterday, our daughter helped him get 240 onion seedlings in the ground. I'll do a separate video about planting and harvesting onions. So this garden is planted and looking good right out of the gate. And yep, it appears that it definitely is better to grow the starters inside, under grow lights in 3.5 inch by 3.5 inch pots. An old dog can learn new tricks, and Jamie says that now this will be his new routine. Thanks for stopping by. Check out my next gardening video here.